Hi everyone, and welcome to this session. I think the first thing that came up from Andrew was great question, what if software did actually work together? That's, I think, a question that people have all the time. Really looking forward to this, and Chris will tell you a bit about himself, but I do know he's in New Zealand, is that right? At Catalyst.
Yeah, that's right.
Terrific, okay. I'll hand over to you and you can tell us about yourself and go through your presentation today. Thanks, Chris.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a little bit about myself. If I can click in the right bit and make the slide change. Apparently I can't. It worked about 2 seconds ago. Let's just use the arrows. There we go. Right, so I'm, as Wendy said, I'm from New Zealand. I'm in Wellington. I'm of Māori descent. My two main iwi are Kaitahu and Kaitimamoe. I've been working on an open source project called Koha since about 1999, and I sit next to the Mahara team, who sit next to the Moodle team at Catalyst. So my presentation kind of covers those three plus another one as well. I'm currently the documentation maintainer for the next upcoming release of Koha, which is in, well, we've got one actually being released tomorrow, but the one after that is in November. I'm Ranginui on Twitter, and you can get me in on email at that email address there as well. So what I'm going to be talking about is kind of the idea of pretty much everything these days. Well, a lot of the work I do these days is making bits of software to work with other bits of software. Not so much adding to bits of software anymore, but more making lots of different pieces of open source things work together, especially in terms of libraries or places that have libraries like government departments or universities or TAFEs or those kind of things. Yeah, the photo is me. That's me on the left. When it would be 42 years ago. That's one of my uncles holding me. That's at Waitangi in the top of the North Island where the Treaty of Waitangi was signed in about 1976 or something. Okay, so the pieces of software I'm going to talk about, I'll just quickly run through. Obviously Moodle, which you all know more about than I do. I've used it, I've never developed for it, but so I'll kind of skip over that. But the other pieces of software that I'm going to talk about that I'm interested in making work with Moodle is, of course, Mahara. If you're not familiar with Mahara, Christina could explain a lot better than I can, but it is an e-portfolio system. It's a way of tracking your learning, tracking your knowledge gathering, tracking the work you've done, all of those kind of things. So it fits really well with Moodle because obviously as you're learning you want to track that. And my dog has just decided to have a fight with the cat because I'm on a thing. Scout, come here. Scout, come here. Scout, come here. Sorry about that. Ugh, the hassles of pet ownership. Right. Okay, back to what I was saying. So Mahara's for tracking your stuff, Moodle's for learning stuff. And then, yeah, the kids are hiding in another room, otherwise they'd be joining in the fun as well. So, yeah, it's... the cat and the dog normally get on together, but they've decided that because they can smell pizza in the house, they'll have a fight. So that was that. Okay, so the other piece of, no, they're not software that work well together. The next piece of software is the one I work on, which is Koha, which is a library management software in terms of more traditionally physical libraries, but these days increasingly more digital libraries as well. So, and in terms of, if you think about like an educational organization or a government organization or even a corporate organization, most of them have some kind of requirement for learning, some kind of requirement for tracking the learning, and some kind of library or knowledge center, as they might call it in the government department, but that's really just a library. So those are three kind of systems that most organizations will be running, and there's been some kind of work done to integrate them, but not a huge amount. I'll just show you a little bit more about Koha, so because you probably haven't seen it in use. This is Rennes University in France, and that's kind of what Koha can look like. That's pulling a bunch of information in from the physical catalogue, from EBSCO, from LexisNexis and Serial Solutions and all sorts of things like that. And a detailed kind of display of a record. So it's kind of, if you've ever been to a library, you've ever used what they call an OPAC, you will have bumped into something like Koha. You may have even bumped into Koha if you're lucky. It runs about 15,000 libraries in the world now. But so stepping back a little bit, traditionally for interoperation, you would make each piece work with each piece. So I'd do some work on Koha, someone would do some work on Moodle, we'd make the two talk together. There's someone to do some work on Mahara, I'd do some more work on Koha. Those two would talk together. Someone would do some work on Moodle, someone would do some work on Mahara, those two would talk together. So we've already got a, what's that, about 6 pieces of work kind of to go to connect 3 pieces of software. You got what's it's not really new, but it's new to libraries at least, is there's a new what do I want to call it? A new open source development coming. It's been going for about a year. It's called FOLIO. The future of libraries is open. I'm sure they came up with the acronym, and came up with the slogan and just tried to make it into, I don't know, it's future of libraries is open, sounds much better than Folio. But this has been pushed by a company called EBSCO that you may have heard of. And then there was a project out of Mellon University in Pittsburgh, which had a grant of a couple of $1 million to develop an academic library management system. It didn't work. They got bogged down in committees and design by committee and stuff, and never really got anything going. But they've merged into this Folio thing as well. And so what they're building this is a platform. And kind of the idea with this is that you have this platform where you have these layers. So another way to the bit I'm interested in anyway is actually this OCAPI layer, the message bus. You've probably heard of things like enterprise service buses and stuff before. Oracle have got one, IBM sell one, a bunch of the big vendors sell these Oracle service buses, and they're just like a bus inside your computer or a bus in the physical world. You put things on them and things get off at other stops. So the thing with Folio, the idea with it that really interests me at least is that they have this bus, they have a defined set of APIs for talking to this bus. You don't really have to worry about the system layer here underneath too much. You can worry about these other 2 layers. I'll cover that a bit later, but I'm kind of focusing on this message bus layer. And kind of the idea here is that I want, instead of having to build all these integration points between, so say for 3 pieces of software, you need to do 6 integrations. Well, 3 different integrate. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So you need 6 pieces of work to do 3 different integrations. I'd rather have it that if you talk to this bus, so if Koha talks to this bus, Moodle can talk to this bus, and Mahara can talk to this bus, then they only need to do 1 piece each. I'm hoping that makes some kind of sense. I'll try and explain it a bit better in some of the other slides. So Folio, they're focused on these things over here, the traditional kind of library stuff. But the thing that they've already started to look into is things like student outcome metrics, which Mahara feeds into, learning management systems, it's Moodle. They want to, be able to do RDF link triples, link data triples, predictive analysis, and that kind of thing. So, this platform exists now. It's pretty decent. They've got that bus layer there. They haven't got too many apps built on top of it yet, but kind of the idea is that if you most universities of a size, say probably bigger than about 5,000 or 6,000 students, will have either something like EBSCO Discovery Services or ProQuest Serial Solutions or one of these other digital content providers. So, and a lot already have EBSCO. So a lot of places that you guys probably deal with, or your people deal with, in terms of educational institutions, will probably end up with Folio kind of anyway, because EBSCO will just kind of roll that out. And so I wanted to make sure that kind of the other open source, like this is Folio's licensed under one of the Apache licenses, so it's open source as well. But I wanted to make sure that the open source learning management systems, library management systems, e-portfolios, those kind of things were some of the early ones to get on here, rather than the Canvases and the Blackboards and those kind of ones being the first ones to offer integration with it. So yeah, this is kind of what I was trying to say, is that instead of building a connector between Koha and Moodle, and then a connector between Koha and Mahara, and a connector between Moodle and Mahara, then we just connect to this Folio, this cloudy thing, the platform as they call it, and each one talks to there, and they don't really have to know anything much more than how to talk to this system and how to get data back out of it. They don't really even need to know that this is Moodle. It could be anything. That this could be any kind of e-portfolio. It doesn't matter as long as they can do a call to get that kind of data out from Folio. So that was kind of the idea. So it's kind of, I mean, I've started work on a little bit of it, but like I said to Andrew before, I don't really have anything to show yet, because they only did the 0.5 release of the bus layer pretty recently. But hopefully for the next iMoot I can actually show this working, which would be more interesting. But yeah, the thing that I kind of like with doing it this way, using something like Folio, is that, like I said before, you don't have to build all of these different connectors. You're just building one connector for your system. Someone else builds a connector for theirs. You can then, if a student system comes in, like one of the banes of my life working on Koha is that every organization has a financial system, and then you have to try and, when you put Koha in, you've got to try and integrate with this new financial system. Generally it's a black box, and the people who sold it to them don't really even know where how to integrate it all. So if it's nice if you could just say, well, if the system integrates with Folio, then it'll integrate with Moodle or Koha or Mahara. And like I said, I think within a few years, most of the reasonable sized academic institutions will end up with Folio, because that's how EBSCO is going to deliver their content anyway. So that's kind of the things I can think of, as that a request tracker, those kind of things. But if we go back a few slides as well, there is these other two layers here. So you've got a UI toolkit and you've got these apps as well. So the other neat thing is that you could, for people to integrate with, say, interoperate with, say, Moodle, if they wanted to build a little app to just get access to some of the data that's held in Moodle, they could build one that worked with FOLIO that talked to Moodle that way, if that makes sense, rather than building one that has to talk to a specific Moodle. And so you could do some neat things that way. It allows you to do that again, that language and the agnostic applications, which for me, I've been programming for a long time, so I use Perl mostly. So for me to connect to Moodle, I'd have to learn, well, I did PHP back when it was PHP FI, so 1997. I'd have to learn modern PHP and write some stuff that way. Whereas if it's going through something like this, I can connect to it using my, because I'm connected to the API, I can connect to it that way. So you could kind of get around this as well with standards, but the problem with standards is that everyone's got one. So they kind of become not standard quite fast. Everyone embraces and extends. Yeah, thanks. That's where I got I think that's where I got the photo from that PDF. Yep. So Christina, I'm not sure. Oh, sorry. Yes, good point. So yeah. So this is kind of the how. Christina's just prompted me to talk about the why. So what kind of integration can I imagine between, say, Moodle and a library management system? Well, often if you're making a course, you might have some required reading or some things that people should read in order to do the course. It would be really nice if you had those in Moodle and you could just click, say, on them and it would automatically put a request on them using your account in the library system, so you could reserve them, and then when you're physically at the location, if they're physical items, you can pick them up because you reserved them, or if they're digital ones, you can get them out then and there. You could do, Koha has this idea of virtual shelves or lists you can make that the librarians use to do displays. Like often in a public library would be something like new books display, but yeah, exactly those kind of things. Links with glossaries, suggested books, all those kind of things, pushing through content both from either way. And then with Mahara, to link that in, you may be doing one of your course requirements. You might be doing some reviews on some literature, for example, and so it would be neat to be able to push that review through to Koha, which would attach it as a comment to the bibliographic record, those kind of things. Koha has star ratings, so you might, if you've read it in Moodle, it'd be nice to be able to just click on it and say it was, a good resource that would get pushed through to Koha straight away. And vice versa, like if people write comments on an item in Koha, then they can pull up in Moodle to get more information about it. Yeah, that's another good one. Suggestions, those kind of things. Yeah, so I think there's like already there is a little bit of integration between Moodle and Koha that a guy at work, Jonathan Harker, did 3 years ago, I think now, that allows you to search Koha from within Moodle and have the results display in Moodle. But that's kind of the limit of the integration. I think if you have single sign-on and you have a nice way to just push data between the two, you could do all sorts of neat things. And it would be really handy for say if the people are reading a PDF or something, it'd be really useful for the librarians to know that that's been read in Moodle, and so that statistics are counted in theirs and usage in the library and those kind of things as well. The way that libraries were traditionally kind of funded was through circulation statistics, like the number of books issued and returned in a year. That doesn't work really now that more and more stuff is digital. So they still really need to know that people are using the resources that they're cataloging. And so some way of being able to track that someone's used it in Moodle and then push that through to Koha for their statistics, those kind of things as well. No, I like your ideas, Tabitha. They're not crazy at all. Yeah, there's yeah, Koha has tags, so if you can tag them and stuff, you can do that in Moodle and stuff as well. That's probably about all I kind of had prepared for that. I'm willing to take plenty of questions. Like I said, I'm early on in building this thing, so I'd hope to have got more done than I have, but I haven't. But yeah, if you have any questions, please fire them away.
Thanks, Chris. There was quite a few questions through, so maybe quite a few people have sort of got that. Oh, here comes some questions now.
Excellent.
I'll leave it. I'll keep us going for like another 5-10 minutes and see where we go from there. I'll just leave you to go to those questions.
Cool. Thank you. Right. So yeah, alfresco. That's a really good idea. We do some alfresco stuff at work, and I'd really like to do alfresco Koha integration some way anyway, because that makes sense. There's a few things like alfresco, and then there's Islandora, and there's DSpace, and these kind of digital asset management and stuff as well that makes sense to all be discoverable in the same place. So yeah, I think using something to do that kind of stuff as well. The nice thing that the alfresco lets you do is it lets you do the tracking the provision of items and stuff as well, which you often need to know if you're an archive or somewhere like that. You need to know where the thing came from and those kind of things. Well, you could use, you could do it without FOLIO, but with FOLIO would mean that if instead of building an alfresco Koha connector, you'd build an alfresco FOLIO connector, and hopefully Koha will have already built a Koha FOLIO connector, and then by building the alfresco FOLIO connector, you can connect to Moodle or I'm assuming like all these other kind of things. The kind of idea is hopefully if you build just one kind of connector to FOLIO and then kind of win on not having to build it to all these other systems. It's not so much a problem with the open source ones, because you can generally build those things and you can generally find people to help you build those connectors. It's more that connecting to proprietary systems, it's much nicer if you can do that through something like FOLIO rather than having to actually deal with their ever-changing, undocumented API where they have no kind of real incentive to help you connect to it, because they are not, unless they can see that they can sell more, it's not really useful for them. But if something like a university can get them to connect to FOLIO. I haven't actually, an IDP is a good point. I'm not clear whether FOLIO can be the IDP or whether FOLIO would use something else like a plain old SAML or something to do the IDP. Yeah, media servers would be pretty neat as well. Does it use OAuth? I don't know, actually. I'm not sure what its authentication system is. all this. The nice thing is it's written by a company called Index Data, who are out of Denmark originally, but most of the developers in the States now, and it's all in GitHub, and it's got decent documentation. Last time I tried to change tabs when I was in Big Blue Button, I killed everything. So I won't try and change a tab and look it up for you quickly. But what I'll try and do is I'll look that up, and I've got another session tomorrow, and I'll see if I can answer that in there, and then you can maybe look at the recording and see what the answer was. But it must use some kind of authentication method for apps to authenticate against the API, but I'm not sure what it actually uses for that. I don't think I missed any of those. No. Nope, I think I've answered all of those.
Well, thank you, Chris, so much. There was a lot to take in there, but it's awesome because it looks like a lot of people got a lot from it, and we'll be able to sort of work from there. Thank you so much for hearing about the work you've been doing, and the links to other areas as well. So don't forget, if you have any more questions or you want to chat further, that each session does have a forum, so you can pop on there. And you'll be pleased to know that Scott Huntley has kindly awarded Chris a special badge for the cat and dog fight.
Thank you.
A little badge has been popped on there.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Chris, so much. Cheers.
Thank you.